The Islamabad Accord is shredded as Israel launches Operation Eternal Darkness in Lebanon, with 182 dead in a single day and Iran moving to seal the Strait of Hormuz. The world's energy markets are on the brink of collapse. Is this a ceasefire or the start of World War III? Welcome to Prime Report. A fragile ceasefire between Iran, the United States, and Israel is rapidly disintegrating, threatening to pull the entire region into a total collapse. While a 2-week truce was recently brokered with the help of international mediators, the agreement is under extreme duress due to a massive escalation of Israeli military operations in Lebanon. This surge in violence has led Tehran to once again threaten the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, a move that could paralyze global energy markets. The conflict, which transitioned from a localized struggle to a direct war involving the U.S. and Iran on February 28, 2026, continues to reshape the regional security architecture. The Middle East finds itself in a state of chaotic transition as a massive military gambit by the United States, and Israel collides with a desperate Iranian counter-strategy. Today, that war is at a critical juncture. The pause is being shredded by a relentless Israeli air campaign in Lebanon that has killed hundreds and displaced millions. The world is watching a dangerous game of brinkmanship where a ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran is being tested by a third front that neither side seems willing to fully include in the peace deal. In Lebanon, the situation has reached a critical flashpoint. On Wednesday, the Israeli military executed one of its most expansive and lethal aerial campaigns since the start of its ground invasion. The Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, reported hitting over 100 Hezbollah command centers and strategic military sites within a 10-minute window. These strikes extended deep into the heart of Beirut, striking dense residential districts like Corniche al-Mazrah without prior warning. This has led to the execution of Operation Eternal Darkness, which on Wednesday alone saw 182 deaths, the deadliest single day of the conflict. Israel's military claims to have eliminated the personal secretary and a nephew of Hezbollah's leadership, signaling a deep intelligence penetration aimed at decapitating the group's upper echelons. The humanitarian crisis in Lebanon is worsening as hospitals struggle to cope with the sudden influx of casualties. The American University of Beirut Medical Center and other major facilities have issued urgent appeals for blood donors, while the Lebanese Red Cross has deployed nearly 100 ambulances. The Israeli government, led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, has stated that it will continue to target Hezbollah wherever necessary to establish a security buffer zone up to the Litani River, regardless of the broader U.S.-Iran truce. Prime Minister Netanyahu confirmed this stance on Thursday, declaring that Israel will continue to strike regardless of the agreements reached in Islamabad. The strategic logic is to isolate Hezbollah from its Iranian patron during the 2-week window, forcing a collapse of the group's command structure before a permanent regional settlement can be reached. President Donald Trump, speaking from the White House late Wednesday, delivered a blunt assessment of the state of play. The president confirmed that while he has agreed to a temporary ceasefire to allow for negotiations in Pakistan, the U.S. military is not pulling back. He stated clearly that all American ships, aircraft, and personnel, bolstered by fresh shipments of advanced weaponry, will remain in and around the Iranian border and the Persian Gulf. Trump's message was a combination of a peace offering and a dire threat. He expressed hope that the degraded enemy in Tehran would comply with the real agreement, which centers on the permanent dismantling of Iran's nuclear ambitions and the guaranteed safety of international shipping. However, the president warned that if terms are not met, the shooting starts again, promising a campaign bigger and better and stronger than ever witnessed. This rhetoric signals that the U.S. views the current pause as a final ultimatum. In sharp contrast, the Iranian leadership held an emergency press conference in Tehran that underscored a sense of betrayal Iranian officials characterize the ongoing Israeli bombardment of Lebanon as a grave and treacherous violation of the Islamabad Accords. From the Iranian perspective, the ceasefire was intended to be comprehensive, covering all regional fronts. Saeed Khatibzadeh, a prominent voice in the Iranian diplomatic corps, stated that the U.S. cannot have its cake and eat it too by claiming peace with Iran while allowing Israel to pulverize Lebanon. In response, Iran has signaled its intent to withdraw from the nascent peace deal. The semi-official Tasnim news agency reported that the Islamic Republic is prepared to resume hostile operations and has already moved to seal off the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian state media reported that the Revolutionary Guards have deployed sea mines and advanced aerospace defense systems to prevent any American or Zionist vessels from entering their territory. This closure has immediately driven oil prices toward the 100 per barrel mark. The White House has demanded the immediate reopening of the strait, emphasizing that the truce, negotiated in part by Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, was a vital step toward preventing a total regional collapse. Tensions were further exacerbated on Wednesday by reports of gunfire outside the U.S. Embassy in Beirut, signaling the volatile security environment for Western interests. In Gaza, the situation remains dire despite a ceasefire plan that has been in place for 6 months. A joint scorecard released today by 5 major humanitarian organizations, including Save the Children, Oxfam, and the Norwegian Refugee Council, concludes that the peace plan endorsed by UN Security Council Resolution 2803 is failing. The report highlights that Palestinians continue to suffer from extreme deprivation and malnutrition. Humanitarian access remains severely obstructed by Israeli military restrictions. Statistics indicate that at least 2 children are killed or injured daily in Gaza. The new day for Gaza remains a distant dream, as the territory has become a secondary concern in a much larger multi-front chess match. Further south, the conflict in Yemen remains a dangerous front. While Houthi attacks on Red Sea shipping had largely subsided toward the end of 2025, the group has recently threatened to resume operations in direct support of Iran. The United Nations Security Council is scheduled to hold emergency briefings this month to address the humanitarian situation in Yemen, where over 22 million people require assistance. The World Food Program, WFP, recently terminated contracts for hundreds of staff in Houthi-controlled northern areas, citing a toxic and insecure operating environment, which is expected to worsen food insecurity for 18 million Yemenis. The secret reality of the current strategy lies in the decoupling of the Lebanese front from the U.S.-Iran ceasefire. While Pakistan, France, and Egypt have all publicly stated that the truce includes Lebanon, the Israeli government and the Trump administration have quietly insisted otherwise. If Israel remains on its current trajectory, the Islamabad Accords will almost certainly collapse before the planned negotiations on April 11th. Iran has tied its compliance to the cessation of attacks on Lebanon. If strikes continue, Tehran will likely authorize its proxies in Yemen, Iraq, and Syria to resume high-volume missile campaigns. Furthermore, the humanitarian situation in Lebanon is moving from critical to irreversible. With over 1 million people displaced, roughly 20% of the population, a continued campaign would likely trigger a total state collapse. Unlike 2006, the Lebanon of 2026 has no economic cushion, with a debt-to-GDP ratio of 144%. There's also a hidden danger in the Strait of Hormuz leverage. If the closure continues, the global economic fallout will drive the next phase of the war. A prolonged closure could lead to a fracture within NATO, as President Trump has expressed frustration with allies who refuse to join a maritime coalition to forcibly reopen the waterway. This internal Western tension is a strategic victory for Iran, as it uses the Lebanese front to drive a wedge between Washington and its European partners. The regional aviation sector has seen some signs of normalization, though they remain tentative. Iraq, Syria, and Bahrain have recently reopened their airspace for the first time since February. This move follows the announcement of the 2-week truce, but several nations, including Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Oman, continue to operate under heavy restrictions. Iran's airspace remains almost entirely closed to commercial traffic, and Kuwait has also maintained a total ban. Airlines are currently conducting continuous threat assessments, with flight schedules expected to take weeks to stabilize, provided the ceasefire holds. Diplomatically, the spotlight is on Pakistan, which is hosting high-level peace negotiations on April 10th. The Pakistani government has utilized its long-standing security ties with Iran and its strategic partnership with the U.S. to act as a bridge. However, the success of these talks hinges on whether the Israeli-Hezbollah conflict can be de-escalated. International relations analysts suggest that Iran's current doctrine is focused on an indirect approach, aiming to exert structural pressure on the U.S. and Israel by driving up the global economic costs of war through maritime blockades. The Middle East appears trapped in a ceasefire trap, where the pause in direct combat has only served to focus more violence on Lebanon. As of April 9th, the Middle East stands at a crossroads. The massive military strikes in Lebanon and subsequent Iranian threats have effectively nullified the immediate relief provided by the ceasefire. The global economy remains on edge as the Strait of Hormuz becomes a central bargaining chip. If the upcoming talks in Pakistan fail to produce a grand bargain that includes a definitive end to the Israeli-Hezbollah war, the region is set for a summer of fire. Neither Trump, Netanyahu, nor the Ayatollahs can afford to look weak at this juncture. For Israel, anything less than the total removal of Hezbollah from its border is seen as a defeat. For Iran, abandoning Lebanon is a surrender of its regional forward defense doctrine. The coming days will be the ultimate test of whether a sustainable peace is possible, or if the region is destined for a wider, more devastating total war. The stakes have never been higher, and the window for a peaceful exit is rapidly closing. What do you think? Is the Islamabad Accord a genuine pathway to peace, or is it merely a tactical setup for a wider regional explosion? Give your suggestion in the comment box. Don't miss our next update on the Strait of Hormuz crisis. Please subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon.